Hey, deserving listeners, sister wives, let's watch.
Major sacrifice for myself.
Before you get
And
angry,
I've been fought.
I defended you.
Why would I believe that in the state that you're at?
I don't, because you don't trust me. It's fine.
That's true. I
It's
don't
true.
trust you.
Please don't point your finger at me or the conversation.
Well, that's true.
Don't point your finger at me.
Fine. Stop pointing the blame at me.
Kate.
You and I?
Yeah, her face is what I would. He's not really making a coherent. He's just fight. He's fighting. It appears he's fighting to fight. Either he knows he's fighting to fight, or he's just upset and he's unglued. And another angle to this is that in his heart he didn't want to be with Christine and did a lot of things to either just show he didn't want to be with Christine and or was trying to push her away so she would actually make that leap and leave him. And that was all. And he's okay with all that for the most part. But it's the end of a relationship. And even if you're the one dumping someone, there's grief there for sure. And all the kids. And also, it's not only just Christine leaving, but it's a breakup of all their covenants or whatever, their togetherness, all the four of them with all the kids. And they'll never get that back again. So there's grief and loss there and pain, and disappointment, humiliation, and that's all okay. But he is directing it at Christine right now anyway, which Christine's just like, what is happening?
A couple times a year doesn't work for a marriage.
You say a couple times a year feels like an accusation.
You're not interested in an intimate marriage with me. I was.
All right, so that was an interesting sequence right there. He was saying, the reason why you are leaving me is because we weren't having sex as often. Because that was that initial, I think, really realization I think that Christine was making when they were putting the door in, all that whole thing. And then she cuts to the chase and says, well, having sex twice a year just isn't enough. And on the surface, and maybe it is that, it's just that what she's saying, but I think what she's pointing at is that it's a symptom, right? That if we're only having sex a couple times a year, it's a symptom of a larger problem of just lack of intimacy in general and love in general and togetherness and effort from you to be with me. And that's the real problem. Because I'm guessing that if he, say, had a medical condition where he couldn't have sex more than twice a year with her, but was still very much in love, then I don't think Christine would have left him. That's just my guess. I can't know that. But so she says, 2 times a year. He knows he's on camera. And then he pauses, he's sort of dumbfounded, he's sort of speechless, which is interesting. I think because he doesn't have a way out of that. He doesn't know how to wiggle out of that. She's like, and she didn't bring that up. He was the one who started that conversation. She's like, okay, well, if you're going to bring that up, then blah. And he doesn't know what to do. So then he, instead of saying, okay, I get that. I don't know what's going on here. We can talk about how to use this, and in your next conflict with whoever, particularly your spouse, try as often as possible to just take a beat and say, I'm going to have to think about that, because often what happens is, data point, oppositional. And that's just often a recipe for destruction. So all he needs to say is, okay, yeah, I hear your point. And let me say this thing. So in your next conflict, really try to as often as possible, even if it just really is hard to say, it's even probably more important to say it, particularly internally, better yet, externally to your partner, of, so at best you can say, I see your point and I get it, and then you can make your point. But if it's too hard to do that, you can say, I'm going to have to think about that one. My initial response is to argue against that, but I don't want to do that because I'm guessing I'm upset and biased right now, so I'm going to, I hear you, and I'm going to think about that, or something, something like that. Anyway, so then he says, I feel like what you're doing is accusing me of something. It's not an accusation to point out facts. So it's interesting that he phrased it. I don't know if he's just trying to win a fight and he's not really in a fight and he's terrible at winning fights. I don't know. Or if he's trying to derail or distract, some sort of attempt at a smokescreen of, okay, what can I say? What can I say? Oh, I know. I can throw up a smokescreen by saying, you're attacking me. This is unfair. Let's get on to that line of thinking. And maybe that works for him in the past, because I could see it especially with like Mary and Robin, maybe not Janelle, but I could see with the other sister wives where they'd be like, "Oh, I'm not attacking you. What?" And now you're talking about the attacking, and you're not talking about what you just said.
Even if you said at this point we could have intimacy again, I wouldn't believe it for a second. It's not like when I'm away from you.
Even if you said you liked plural marriage and would be devoted to it, I wouldn't believe that for a second.
Okay.
Christine, that's our deal. Our deal was plural marriage.
But in plural marriage, when it was really good.
But very briefly, what I will say is this conversation is actually really healthy. They're airing their grievances. That's important. They're not yelling. Even if there is opposition, they might actually be absorbing what the other person is saying. They're getting things off their chest. They're clarifying for themselves, and it's helpful. In a lot of ways, I think his questions are being answered. Even if they've already been answered, sometimes you need them answered a number of times before it really can sink in. And so I'll commend them for that. So overall, the topic sentence is, this is a very healthy conversation. And it's never going to go well. It's just not. But so there's some issues there. But Cody included, there's a lot of things he could be doing in a destructive manner, and he's not doing it. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. And if you sign up, please use the link below because it helps us out. So just recently, therapy has become somewhat mainstream. People in my field, including me, have been advocating for this for decades, so it's nice to see. But there's still progress to be made. For example, a recent study found that 26% of Americans are avoiding therapy, even though they might need it, due to a fear of judgment. This is Mental Health Awareness Month, so let's try to change that by encouraging everyone to get the help that they need. As I always say, take care of yourself, and what better way to take care of yourself than to get the therapy that you need? Well, a good option to find a therapist is at BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's definitely worth giving a try. They have over 30,000 therapists with a wide variety of styles. And BetterHelp makes it a lot easier to shop around because you can easily switch therapists if you need to. So, we're all better with help. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
You
For
want to keep
10
looking
years
back.
then. That was the problem. The problem was just that you never got over that.
You are an ass. To think that my value as a human being is contingent upon how you feel I'm treating other people and you don't find me attractive. I think you're looking for excuses. Why should how I treat the woman you love?
Okay, so I'm realizing now that there's this code that they have, which is 10 years ago in certain contexts is referring to Robin, even though they're not talking about Robin. I think one of the big reasons is they have a policy in maybe polygamy, but in this family, that they don't directly get involved in the other marriages or comment about them. And I think in a well-functioning polygamous marriage, I think that might be a good policy. Yeah, I agree. That's the way it looks. That's the way it's looked to me this whole time, is that he is trying to rework the narrative, not necessarily in a Machiavellian evil way, but, there could be a lot of shame that he's going through. I wouldn't be surprised for, like before with Christine, it was just like this aggravating thing, so under normal circumstances, in monogamous relationships, he would, a long time ago, just maybe started talking about divorce, or maybe 5 years ago, I'm guessing, or her, and they just would have gone through that. But because of the religion and the rigidity, or just their lack of self-awareness or something, it played out the way that it plays out. And then she ends up leaving. And then he's sort of halfway, just imagine that if he was only with Christine and things started to take a downturn, every day would be a reminder that he's not in the right relationship, and it would accelerate things and her. But since they don't, especially during COVID, it's out of sight, out of mind, and it goes on way longer than it would have normally. But it's this constant thorn in his side is the way that it looked to me, whether or not that's justified or not, right? But let's just say that he fell out of love a while back, okay? And then she finally, and so every time he sees her, it's just kind of this aggravating response that he has to her. She's like, okay, fine, I'm gone. And then now he can kind of relax, and then he starts to think, oh, this actually doesn't feel good. Maybe I went wrong. Maybe something went wrong. Hey, how come you're going? That happens sometimes, right? But yeah, so I think he's either trying to just cope, and he just needs this narrative to make him feel less like a horrible husband, because that's been a theme since the very beginning. Since season 1, is that when there were issues, the way that it looked to me with any of the sister wives was that they would quietly complain in a fairly passive manner, either grumbling to themselves or kind of laughing at him when they would have those adult meetings. The sister wives would be like, oh, there he goes again. And they'd be like, yeah, he always does that. And I think when it was going well, they could all manage that without having it go down a negative road. But at some point, I think it started to go down a negative road, and he started to feel like he was being ganged up on. You could say that he's not justified, but it kind of looked that way. And I think he could kind of hold it together and have enough intimacy and closeness and reassurance of acceptance from the sister wives that he could sleep well at night. But at some point that started to not happen, and it was all just that feeling of being ganged up on, So I wonder if that is part of this whole thing for him, not only of the resentment, but also just the narrative that he has of, this isn't my fault. I'm not a bad person. How come I'm being attacked here? So when she says 10 years, it's been heartbreak, I think he is thinking that's unfair because, one, you didn't tell me in the beginning, years and years ago, 8 years ago, or whatever. But also, I was trying really hard, and I thought we put a lot of that behind us, and we had a lot of great moments. Are you telling me that none of that was true? And it's possible that under other circumstances, she would be able to reassure in that way. But, it's not uncommon that when you're at that phase of divorce that you're just like, why did I get married to this guy? But overall, what she is exhibiting is something that I think is very understandable, which is, what is up with this narrative that you're putting forth that I just randomly dumped you? I have been telling you, even potentially before Robin showed up, about how I was feeling. Christine was the one that for many years now has been saying things aren't right. And the way that it looked was that things either got better, which I was not thinking really happened, or they got kind of better. It more looked like Christine and Cody just kind of swept it under the rug. That's the way it kind of looked to me. But I don't know. So I think for her to be frustrated is understandable, because I'm frustrated. I'm like, you're not acknowledging reality.
That's just what it comes down to. I think he has a favorite wife, and I think he has a favorite wife. And that's why all of this is like it is. And apparently I'm not treating her well enough. So there's nothing I can do.
Yeah, that could be, but I think it's, of course I have no idea, and he has possibly criticized her for that, but I suspect, if anything, relationships take their course. He's been married to the first 3 wives for 20 plus, almost, I think almost 30 years, maybe 30 years. And sometimes things take their course. It's not a great thing to think about if you're in a good relationship after 10 years, that things might take their course after 30 years. But, it happens sometimes, and for both of them. And I think that's the way unless I hear otherwise, that tends to be the way I frame these things. It's just because the complaints that they each have about each other, I think particularly Christine's complaints about him, not making her feel special, not prioritizing her, was probably because he was falling out of love. Because if he was in love the way he was earlier, he would have put the effort. He would have noticed and cared and like, oh no, I'm losing her, and been, made sure that he doesn't. Not because he's trying to manipulate, but because he actually cares. He doesn't want to lose her. He needs her. He hasn't exhibited that at all lately. So that doesn't make it okay, and he should have reckoned with it and communicated it, and he certainly shouldn't rework the narrative to she was the one that left him.
I mean, honestly, what he's asking from me is ridiculous.
Let's just look at present, where we are.
Yeah, marriage sucks.
Do you want to be married to me? Do you want to
Christine, do you want to be married to me? Because you're the one that shut.
So close. She asked a really great question, because that is the most pertinent question. If he wanted to be married to her, he would have put the effort in for years now, and he wasn't. And she wasn't being accusatory or hostile. And then he doesn't answer, and he says, do you want to be married to me? I think as a way of trying to avoid the blame, or I don't know, maybe he sees it that way. Maybe he, in light of what he was saying earlier, maybe he never even knew, one narrative here is that he never was allowed, given his context, his religion or whatever, the way he was raised, to even entertain the question, what do I want? Do I want this? Do I want to be married to this person? Do I want polygamy? And he just went along with it because that's what he thought he needed to do to be a good boy. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, who knows? There's no evidence of this, but it's a possibility that his whole endeavor in polygamy was him trying to get his dad's approval. I don't know. There's no evidence of that, but there's no evidence against it. Anyway, so he might actually not even have that question in his mind. But when Robin came along and the family pursued her and they got married, for the very first time, he might have felt like, oh, I think I want this. And it feels compatible, feels good. And what's going on with those other marriages? Wow, the comparison, the way this, I don't know. There's not a lot of evidence of this either, but so he might not even have ever asked that question to himself, do I want to be married to Christine, But he's a grown man. He should have explored it, especially by now. And he should answer that question. He should be able to answer that question. She asked in a sincere way, do you, because she's like, you seem to be trying to get back together with me. Do you want to be married to me? And right there, right? If he truly is being dumped, then all he has to say is, yeah, I want to be married to you. Of course. I love you. I want to work on that. But he deflects. So it's looking more and more like it's all just a way of trying to frame it as if she's the bad guy, which is, it happens. But I don't know, immature.
The first two blows here.
No, I don't want to be married to you.
And then she answers it directly. So she's being asked the pertinent question, the central question, and she answers it directly in a caring way, in a sincere way. Maybe he'll answer it now. All right, well, I want to thank everyone for subscribing and liking the videos. I do look at those statistics. I will see a percentage of likes versus dislikes, and we usually hover around 97% likes to dislikes. But when they get low, sometimes I'll say, well, what did I say? And, sometimes that can help. But if you like what I'm doing, and really all YouTube channels, if you like, I try to do it more. It's sort of like if you worked in restaurants, you are more likely to tip more because you just kind of know the grind. Well, I know what it's like to be a YouTuber and to get likes or not get likes. And so if you ever like a video, even in a little bit, it doesn't take much to hit that little thumb up button. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.